Today's podcast is brought to you by Progresso Talent Partners, who for more than 25 years have successfully delivered interim and permanent leadership talent to transform businesses. To hire the talent you need to enable your business to thrive, visit www.progressotalent.com today. Welcome listeners to the Extrology podcast. Thrilled today to be joined by Tony Connelly, the visionary founder and CEO of AccountsIQ. Tony's journey is nothing short of extraordinary. From leaving a secure position as a partner in an accounting firm to launching a cutting-edge cloud-based financial management platform in the midst of a global recession. Over the years, Tony has navigated countless challenges from market pivots to rapid growth, all while staying at the forefront of innovation in the finance world. In our conversation, Tony shares the highs, the lows, and the lessons learned along the way, offering invaluable insights for anyone looking to make their mark in business and beyond. So what's the story behind the story? Without further ado, let's get into it. Tony Connelly, welcome to the Extrology podcast. Pleasure to have you here as my guest today. Great to see you and great to have you here. I'm keen to dive straight in.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Thanks, Lee.
Fantastic. Well, let's start for context. I think it's always useful for listeners to understand a little bit of background. Could you tell us a bit about perhaps your early life and what perhaps influenced your decision to pursue a career, first and foremost in accounting and then latterly in technology?
Yeah, I guess I obviously started my career with education, and I had a bit of a hybrid education. I did a business degree in UCD in Dublin, and then went in to do chartered accountancy with KPMG, qualified as a chartered accountant, but had always had an interest in IT when I was in college, and despite having qualified as a chartered accountant, had this hankering to do something around IT. And it wasn't as obvious then as it is now what route you could take to get into IT. It was early days in that respect, and I found a course in Trinity College and went back and did a kind of a postgrad in what was called systems analysis at the time. But it was pretty much early days of IT, and had a real strong interest in that sort of hybrid area of understanding IT and understanding business, and used that, I guess, then to move into consultancy. And so I worked in KPMG in their consulting department, was a manager in their consulting department, implementing finance systems largely, and implementing and designing finance systems. So I had that background, and I guess I left there and set up my own consulting practice, and was doing lots of work advising companies on their use of IT and their IT strategy, and got involved in various jobs. And ultimately that kind of got me to a stage where I was involved in some reasonably large projects, and the web, as it was called then, it wasn't called the cloud, was sort of coming into sort of the commercial domain, as opposed to up to then it was very much educational and institutional platform, but it was being made more available, and it opened up great opportunities. I had been involved in project managing and fairly sizable projects, and one being a project for British Road Services in the UK that lasted about a year and a half, and I was doing a project to select and implement a finance system. And what I was fascinated with was the project to implement the finance system was a fraction of the size of the project to link all the locations together. They had 280 locations around the UK, and they had leased lines going all over the place, and the infrastructure to link all those locations together was a massive project, and I was on a relatively small project to select and implement a finance system, and that always struck me as being kind of an interesting one, where the finance piece was relatively small compared to the infrastructure piece. And I then later worked on a project called Gulliver, which was actually a booking engine for the tourism sector, which was a very big, important sector in Ireland, and it was also joining North and South of Ireland at the time in terms of tourism, and I was brought in to project manage. They had built this massive infrastructure built on digital deck servers and leased lines across the country to link all these tourist offices, which was costing a fortune to run. And I was brought in to look at how would you rationalize this and make it more accessible and so on. And as part of that, we used the early stage web and internet to essentially, the conclusion drawn was that most of the information for the tourism sector was actually static information, like how many, what the facilities of the hotels were, what the attractions were, what was going on around the country. It was pretty static information. And what was not static was availability. And so we used messaging at an early stage across the web to actually update availability, and it really took that need for the lease line infrastructure out of the picture altogether, and it made it much more feasible to actually deliver a very robust solution to all the tourist offices. And I guess that was the early stages of kind of realizing that the web, as it was then, had a role to play, and the web enabled things without you needing to own the physical infrastructure.
Do you recall, if you reflect back, you mentioned you studied in Dublin. Did you grow up in Dublin? And I guess from a childhood perspective, at what point do you recall perhaps first taking an interest in technology, IT, but technology per se?
Yeah, it's a kind of, I'd love to tell you that when I was 15 or 16, I was really into technology, but I'd be lying. I was interested in lots of other things, but I hadn't really been exposed to any of that. And it was reasonably early stage, I was going through college kind of at a stage when, IBM's PC was just coming out. And when I did, as part of my business degree, the IT side, and we used to submit punch cards to actually submit programs, and if you had a comma in the wrong place on the punch card submission, you'd get it back the next day, and then you'd have to resubmit it again. So I was very much that exposure, but I really had a hankering for that sort of area, and as kind of students do at the time, I would offer to do other people's IT projects, and if they did my national economics project or something like that. So there was always trading going on where people were going, I don't really get this IT stuff, so can you do that bit for me? So I always had that interest in it.
And what about business? You mentioned studying business, but what was behind? Was there a sort of influence behind that? The career choice of initially a chartered accountant. How did that come about?
Yeah, I guess my father was a management consultant, and so he had been involved in business. So I probably picked up lots of stuff from him, and I'm sure just through osmosis of being at the dinner table, I was picking up stuff from projects he was working on and so on. So I guess that he would have influenced me in terms of I was always interested in that sort of idea of working on projects that and I guess even though I did chartered accountancy, I came out very much liking the idea of change, and if he was a management consultant, he was probably involved in a lot of change, and I was probably grew up comfortable with that. And a lot of people, in fairness, struggle with change, and I embraced in change, and I always had enjoyed that part of implementing change.
Which leads me nicely on a bit of a lazy assumption, if you like, but one of the things that intrigued me was that having qualified a professional qualification, and the reality is people will always need an accountant. And I think increasingly, if we reflect where we are today, technology is such an integral part of our lives. We all need someone to deliver that technology and innovate and create new and all that sort of good stuff. But if we reflect back to sort of the 90s and the noughties, as it is today, accounting is a very solid career choice. You go from what is a relatively perceived, anyway, at least as a secure position as a partner in a mid-sized accounting firm, as I understand it, to eventually to founding your own company, which is a big leap. What sort of fears or uncertainties did you have, and how perhaps did you overcome them?
Yeah, I guess as I said earlier, the that sort of idea of being involved in projects always kind of interested me. And when I qualified in KPMG and as a chartered accountant, I actually applied for they had this program to go to the US and work with their accounting department. And I was lucky enough that a guy called Jeffrey Perrin was in charge of their personnel department, and I went for an interview with the partner over from the Boston office, and he said to me afterwards, "Do you mind if I ask, are you really interested in going to the US?" And I said, "Yes, of course I am." And he said, "I just get there's something missing, and I want you to go away and think about it." And I went away and thought about it, and came back to him and said, "Actually, I don't want to work as an accountant." And he said, "That's fine. Well, just think about what you do want to do." And he set up a meeting for me with the head of their consulting division, and I went up and met him, and he said, "Go and do go do something around IT." So hence I went to Trinity College, and I moved to their department, and never looked back, and I very much enjoyed what I've done in that time, and that sort of hybrid. I never regret doing chartered accountancy, because it's been key to my understanding of business, my understanding of, and ultimately what I ended up creating. So it's been very much that mix of the hybrid skills of IT and accountancy and business that has benefited me.
Was there I'm fascinated by that conversation and the part it's played in shaping your future, if you like. Had you, prior to that conversation and that very pointed question around, or statement around, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but that sense of, something's missing, I'm not quite sure. Had you that sense prior, or did it perhaps, it took that conversation, that question to almost lift that out of you?
Yeah, in fairness, it took that question. I probably did. I probably, in the background, had an awareness. I had that sort of, as I mentioned, in terms of my IT background in college, I'd always had an interest in it, but there was no obvious route into any sort of career in that area. And it was almost like, I still had that desire in the background, to get involved in something like that. But it took that question, and I honestly felt I wanted to go to the States and work and I could have ended up still, staying in that partnership, working in audit or something like that. But the realization that was not what I wanted to do was really crystallized by me thinking about answering that question.
So what was it that inspired you to start AccountsIQ?
So I guess I over the years I'd been involved in my consultancy firm had been involved in quite a number of things, and I had actually been involved because I was a chartered accountant in advising firms like Ernst & Young and indeed KPMG later on, and BDO on their use of IT. And so I had a very strong awareness of what happens within accounting firms. And they later merged into a firm that's now part of Grant Thornton, and became a partner in that firm, and brought my consulting firm into that, my consulting team into that firm. And I was fascinated with the one area where they were really kind of antiquated in terms of how they used IT was how they did the books, as they were called, for their clients, and their clients were sending in boxes of invoices, and month end was a major kind of bottleneck where kind of stuff was arriving in, and everybody had to work long hours to get it processed, and because everyone was putting pressure to get their accounts out and VAT returns done and so on, and it just seemed antiquated to me that was still happening. And I guess that was the catalyst for me saying, and because of my experience in implementing a number of projects that used the web, I was very aware of the capabilities of the web. And interesting enough, we used at the time a product called Sage 50, or that the firm used that product, and which was a very successful product. But I went and met Sage at the time to say, could you not do this? Could you not use the web? And they were really, why would we do that? Like, why would our clients wouldn't feel that their data would be safe if we put it in what's now called the cloud, but it's kind of become the cloud. It was the web, and there was this all intrigue as to, well, if it's sitting in the web, where exactly is it, and is it safe? I remember one of my early presentations of AccountsIQ going along to an accounting firm, and the partner pointing over at the server sitting in the corner of the boardroom saying, "All my information is sitting on that server over there. Isn't it safe because I can see it?" And so trying to explain to them that in actual fact, if you know, with the proper data security infrastructure, your data is far safer in the cloud. There was a lot of that going on at the time in terms of just trying to understand it. So I saw the opportunity and left that firm, and a number of the people who worked for me actually came with me and set up what is now AccountsIQ. And we were lucky enough to, when we set it up, we tried to call it WebBooks, and couldn't register the name webbooks.com or the domain because some bookseller had it, and we were lucky enough not to be able to buy that, because I think AccountsIQ turned out to be a much better name. So we had to go away and think about what name to use.
How do you think your background in accounting and IT shaped the vision for the company?
Well, I think like I was very the sort of domain knowledge of accounting and what's happening and doing all that sort of processing and what goes on in terms of servicing clients and processing people's transactions and doing all that was key to actually me being able to do that. So although I had the hybrid IT skills, it was very much the that domain knowledge of accounting was. I think it would have been very difficult to do it without that domain knowledge.
The thing that struck me is I understood that you launched AccountsIQ in 2008. Is that correct?
Well, we actually in 2005.
2005.
And we launched the product in 2008.
Right.
Just before Lehman Brothers went bust, which was a great timing.
It's going to be my question, actually, that I'd read of the 2008 date. So you're right at the onset of a global meltdown. It must have been incredibly challenging. How did you navigate those early years, and I guess what kept you motivated?
Yeah, I guess as I said, we set up in 2005 really, and spent 3 years building the product. I mean, with an accounting product, nobody is going to take half an accounting system, so we had to develop quite a lot, and we wanted to develop it from scratch, to be delivered in the cloud and on the internet. So we weren't kind of building software in the way most licensed software was built. So it was very much built over that period, and we launched. We took on our first head of sales in January 2008, and I think Lehman Brothers went bust in March 2008. So it was rather unfortunate timing. And in Ireland, certainly, probably we suffered more than most countries. Unemployment, like the economy was booming just prior to that. I think the unemployment rate was 4.2%, and between then and 2011, it went up to 14.5%. So it had a massive impact on our country, and we would go along to do presentations. Our initial target market was accounting firms in terms of delivering a platform on the web that would allow them service their clients and address that need of kind of the month end, spreading the load and doing stuff in a more collaborative way was very much the vision. And we were going along meeting accountants and presenting it, here is a system that you can use. And I remember one guy saying, well, it looks like a really good system, but we're too busy trying to save our clients. So as I like to say to some people, during that period, we were able to perfect the product in the absence of having to service lots of customers.
How did you overcome those sorts of hurdles? Because it's, to your point, a hugely challenging time. And as I recall, my brother-in-law actually was running a business in Ireland at the time. And, I remember the phrase that Celtic Tiger, I think that was the description that was used to describe the Irish economy at the time. It was on a real lick, wasn't it? To your point, it was really booming. Yeah. And I think hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? Looking back and reflecting on the fact that perhaps with not as many customers as you might have anticipated, gives you an opportunity to solve some of the challenges around product. But what were some of the bigger hurdles that you faced in the early stages of AccountsIQ, and how perhaps did you overcome them?
Well, I guess we would have had a plan to launch the product and get some early customers, and then raise some capital to kind of bring it to the next stage. And it became a significant challenge to try and raise money during that period because, we were struggling to sign up new customers. There wasn't a lot of money around because a lot of it had been burnt by, the various banks going bust, and there was a lot of skepticism about investing. There's quite a lot of phrases like Celtic Tiger at the time. Another one I remember was investing in blue chip companies. Nobody says blue chip companies anymore because
No, that's a
blue
good
chip
point.
companies were banks, and suddenly blue chip was gone. So there was a lot of skepticism around investing and so on. So
You're absolutely right. I never thought of that before. Actually, you're right. It was a really prevalent phrase for the longest time, but you just don't hear it spoken of anymore.
yeah. So there's a lot sort of the solid foundations on which a lot of it was built sort of started to crumble. So I guess there was a lot of uncertainty around at that time. So we, to be honest, we struggled during that period and nearly went bust in 2011. We were very close to going bust. Like we even discussed appointing a receiver. So we got to that stage, and we were struggling to make salaries. There was a lot of what they call bootstrapping going on, and I was interested in I remember at the time somebody saying, "Oh, so you're bootstrapping your business," and looking up that where did bootstrapping come from? And it was a phrase when people wanted to get stuff done, pull up their bootstraps. So it had nothing to do with sort of technology and business, but it was an interesting phrase. And we did have to kind of we had originally taken on something in the region of 21 or 22 people, and we did have to let a few of them go. And I was very focused on trying to keep the team together, and there was things to consider, like people had some of the people involved had families and so on, so you need to make sure that you could keep that together as best as possible. And we did restructure in 2012, and kind of there can be a lot of difficulty in that process because there's lots of hurdles and complexity in fundraising, and I was lucky enough to have that business background and accounting background, so I understood all of this. But there's an awful lot of technology people who get involved in fundraising and they don't really understand what they're getting involved in, and there's all sorts of structures in anti-dilution and double dips and all these things coming through from venture capital and angel investors and so on that you need to watch out for. And I was lucky enough to be able to kind of maneuver my way around those in a way that we were able to find a way of restructuring and bringing a bit of capital into the company and moving forward from there. So that was a turning point for us, and it was certainly the heavy learning part. And I do, just talking about being a partner in an accounting firm, I do remember my wife at one stage, who has been incredibly supportive to me during this whole process, saying to me, "Just remind me why you left being a partner in an accounting firm again."
Can you perhaps, are there other key milestones in AccountsIQ's journey that were particularly meaningful to you? And how perhaps did those moments shape the future of the company?
Well, I guess, a key, when we restructured, I guess, we decided that Ireland was too small for, a software side, and we really needed to get established elsewhere. We did have to pivot as well, because we felt while accountants is very much a key part of our target audience, by their nature, and I can say this as a chartered accountant, accountants are cautious and they're not early adopters of technology. So we did have to pivot and we looked at sort of, okay, the logic behind building this platform was very much, how do you manage multiple diverse businesses on one platform, and the whole idea of delivering a solution over the web that people could access and collaborate with their clients. How can we apply that to other businesses? So we pivoted and built kind of consolidation capability and ability to handle foreign exchange and that sort of thing into the platform, and went after consolidation, groups that had subsidiaries and so on, and tried to specialize in a platform to manage multi-entity businesses. And we looked at franchises and things that have come up since, like renewable energy, are driven by things called special purpose vehicles. So SPVs are created to actually house individual wind farms or solar farms and that sort of thing. And, companies could have 60, 70 of those, and they need to be run as individual businesses, but on a common platform. So that idea of kind of using what was now becoming the cloud to actually manage diverse businesses and multi-location businesses and so on the web was really where we focused our efforts, and so we did need to pivot our kind of original thinking and go after that.
What do you think you learned from that experience? I guess about the importance of adaptability in business.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly at an early stage, the need to be adaptable and adjust to build a startup and move to kind of do that in a way that you brought your team along and they didn't feel this guy doesn't have a clue what he's doing. So there was an element of just adapting and adjusting as you went along, but not to feel that you were completely changing direction. And in fairness, we always maintained that sort of, it was kind of very much a focus on the internet facilitates, without having to buy a load of infrastructure, multi-entity businesses to manage their businesses online. And it was very much that. It was more adapting that vision in terms of like what sort of businesses could benefit from that.
And the thing that strikes me about your journey, Tony, is that you've grown significantly over the years, but inevitably certainly faced some very challenging environments, not least the 2008 meltdown to which you refer. I think we've without getting into politics, but we've had Brexit, we've had the global pandemic. There's been a lot that has would impact the running of a business significantly, and barriers, hurdles to overcome. What strategies have you employed to maintain your growth and indeed your resilience in such times?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I guess one of the phrases I always liked was and I very much have led my life by that is play with the hand you're dealt. Don't wish you had somebody else's hand. And I've always led my life that way. Of just whatever's coming in front of me, it's just what I have to deal with. So whether it was kind of deciding how we'd pay the salaries at the end of the month, or whether we needed to expand into another sector, or deal with stuff, it was just another challenge, and so I've always sort of led my kind of life with that sort of thing of just deal with the hand that you're dealt, and whether it's kind of Brexit or other things. I mean, certainly things like Brexit were important because, like right now, over 70% of our revenues are based in the UK, so it's a sizable market to us. And Brexit didn't help, but it's still a very important aspect, and you needed to deal with that situation as it arose. And there's no certainty in any of these things, and it's part of the sort of interesting journey that you have to deal with is challenges are put in your way. I read Franklin D. Roosevelt, I think, said something like a skilled sailor was never created in calm seas. So you learn a lot from having to adapt and deal with stormy seas.
I think it's now butchering basic human psychology, but we all crave. I once said to somebody, we all crave certainty, and actually the challenge that was made to that statement was it's not so much certainty, it's control, which in itself is a bit of an illusion. So we create this. We feel we've got certainty each day we wake up. We look at our schedules, we think, right, I'm here at this time, I've got to address this issue, I've got to deal with this problem, whatever it might be. There are all these things that we schedule in our time. So we believe, we wake up with this illusion of certainty through the course of the day. But the reality is none of us know. None of us have that crystal ball. So we're all faced with uncertainty at every turn. There could be anything that could happen at any one given time that sets us off on a different path. And I think it's true of business too. You can mitigate and you can plan, but at some point, who could have predicted, for example, a global pandemic? Now, there are some insights that would argue that was very predictable. History would teach us that, but in reality, none of us know when it's coming. So I think it's, so I guess that uncertainty, that's an inevitable feature of leading any business, isn't, let alone one that has gone from startup to growth phase. It's never a straight line, I guess, is my point.
No, it's not, and to some extent, if you go in expecting that you're going to control it and that you have clarity in terms of how things are going to happen, you're fooling yourself. Because it's just not going to happen, and therefore, the ability to adapt and deal with the situations that are in front of you is key. So, I've always felt that that sort of ability, lifelong learning ability of sort of saying, look, I'll just deal with the situations that come along, and if something arises that I'm not, that familiar with, I'll just deal with it at the time, and while you go to college and you feel your education is finished at that stage, it definitely isn't. Lots of life experiences teach you lots of things, and you need to be open to life. That idea of lifelong learning. I often think that there's that sort of in doing something like a startup, you're not following a well-trodden path, and there's always an element of imposter syndrome with when you're not following a trodden path, because you're convincing other people that this is the way to go, and sometimes you go, what if I really don't know what I'm doing? So that imposter syndrome comes out. I think any genuine kind of startup and if they're really trotting a new path, they will definitely feel that imposter syndrome, because they've only just barely convinced themselves of what they're trying to convince others of. So,
what about the role of innovation? And in particular, I'm intrigued as to the advancement of technology. I mean, I guess the one that would spring to mind currently would be AI. But how has the advancement of technology influenced the evolution of AccountsIQ?
I mean, it's been sort of key. Like, we've always kept an eye on what's happening in technology and have adapted it. I mean, one of the aspects, and it's interesting also that, like, while a lot of stuff changes, in many ways it doesn't change as much as people think, because there's all this terminology comes up, and it's kind of like saying, well, that's actually not that dissimilar to what we were doing before. I mean, it's a bit like the term cloud. I mean, it was called internet and web and all this sort of thing, and it's kind of like it was launched as if cloud was a brand new thing, but it wasn't brand new. There was lots, and technology has gone from big central servers being, and accounting firms were actually involved in this idea of leasing computer time to use central computers at one stage, and then it became personal computers, and those personal computers went out and individuals used them, and it's kind of gone back around to, because the cloud has enabled centralized computing, putting a lot of power centrally that lots of people use. So, while there is a lot of change, you can see patterns in terms of how it's done. And even in terms of our AI, we're constantly adapting AI, but we've automated synchronization with bank accounts and reconciliation of bank accounts. We're using OCR for transaction posting. So we do lots of stuff that I guess would be called more machine learning than AI. And but the reality is, anything where one of our objectives has very much been, and the brand AccountsIQ, where in the IQ piece, is very much that we're focused on using the best of the technology to automate as much as possible, so that finance teams spend less time processing transactions, because most of that is mundane stuff that they didn't spend years in college learning how to do this just to post an invoice. So you want to try and automate as much of that as possible, so that they can concentrate more on the business intelligence in terms of identifying where the business is doing well, and in a kind of multi-entity world, it's like, can you get group-wide visibility across the group instantaneously via the web that gives you intelligence of how the business is doing and how you can improve the business. So, a lot of it's, you constantly need to keep an eye on what's happening. But it's surprisingly, AI has been announced as if it's just suddenly landed in people's laps in the last year or two. But it's been around in different guises for quite some time.
What excites you about the future possibilities that AI presents?
Yeah, I guess we would very much probably see. People ask me if is it going to change people's jobs? Is it going to replace people's jobs in any particular world? And I would say, you should consider it like an assistant to in terms of doing things, and where we would very much apply it as kind of saying take the mundane aspect out of your life and use the intelligence to use the artificial intelligence to process stuff that can help you. And quite often, the human intelligence still needs to be there to actually interpret what's coming out and work with that. So, the areas that we would see are opportunities for AI to kind of use, the information that's in the system. So, you've got sort of projections sitting in the system, and you've got what's actually happening, and for it to kind of say, well, if this is where you went, may have gone wrong, and try and predict forward as to what might happen if you continue on that particular path. And one of the things I strongly believe is that AI can't work in a vacuum. So it's not going to suddenly come up with stuff. It needs information to work on. So we're building much more capability into the system to actually not just look back at what's happened or process transactions, but also look forward as to where, record the sort of parameters under which you're expecting the business to grow, and what are those parameters. And then, ultimately you can use hope, and this would be very much kind of our vision is that you could use that to actually say, well, your assumptions in terms of how the business went wrong based on what you've actually done were incorrect, and maybe they need to be adjusted in this way, or maybe if you did this particular way. And it's not trying to do it. It's more trying to help them analyze what's in front of them, as opposed to, and not spending, long periods of time, trudging through data. Let AI trudge through the data. Let AI process find where the transactions, say in a bank reconciliation, when what's in the bank is in your accounting system, and if there's any reconciliation issues, let it find those. Let it recognize an invoice that's coming in and identify where it matches up with some what someone ordered, or do any of that sort of thing, so that you can focus on improving the business. And that would be very much our focus in terms of where we see things going and how we will invest in AI.
And what about, and congratulations, by the way, albeit somewhat belatedly, on the success of your recent Series C funding, and therefore your plans to expand. I wonder as to what role perhaps you see AI playing in shaping the future of financial management, and perhaps AccountsIQ's position in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, look, we AccountsIQ, because it's delivered in the cloud, is very much, the term is software as a service. So the whole idea is businesses don't need to own technology; they just need to use it. So it's a utility, and they're using it, and we're trying to improve what's available through that on a constant basis, and deliver more on the software side and deliver more on the services side. And in actual fact, one of the things I think a lot of technology companies miss is they focus on the software side and forget about the services side. But the service side is just as important, and we've built a lot of intellectual property in how we've gone about servicing clients. So, I would place a huge degree of importance on things like we measure people's customer success on onboarding, for example, and in terms of support. And we constantly get kind of 97, 98% customer satisfaction rates. And we pay real attention to that, because like the way I would view it is that, when somebody onboards onto our platform and they're moving from another platform, if we've missold them, or if we've identified, if our platform doesn't do something that they need it to do, that'll come out of the wash when they're onboarding. So that to me is a very strong measure of kind of how we're doing. And churn is also a measure. Like, if we have a very low rate of churn, so 2% per annum in terms of kind of the sort of level of churn, and indeed our existing customers buy more. So those kind of measures are really important to us, and that service piece is really important. So we're putting a lot of effort, not just into the software, but also into the service piece. And we put a lot of effort into building, for example, AIQ Academy, where people can learn just in time, we call it. And the reason for that is like we identified at an early stage that even when we go into a company and teach their people how to use the software, the fact of the matter is over the next 5 to 10 years while they're using the software, people change jobs, people get promoted, people come in and leave and all that sort of thing. And all of a sudden you've got somebody coming into the company who is looking at this AccountsIQ software. I've never heard of it. How do you use it? And so we've put a lot of focus on that service piece of, well, if you want to learn how to use it, it's all online. There's videos on how to use every aspect of the system. And so enhancing how we actually deliver the service and manage it. And if it's going to be utility, our customers need to feel we're almost like a partner. It's not just they bought a piece of software off us and we delivered it and we moved away. We're very much, it's almost like their outsourced IT team. And so we very much deliver that. And in terms of AI, we think of AI in both those terms. It's not just in the software, it's also in how we deliver our service.
Do you think, therefore, someone said a phrase to me the other day, which I'm now arguably going to butcher, but it was to the effect of the greater the artificial intelligence becomes, the more human we should become. And what they meant by that was that, we're not going to, actually the human connection, if you like, the human element to the work we do becomes ever more critical, not only from a societal perspective, but just in terms of things like service, for example. How important has the human element been to your success, do you think, given that you're working at the forefront of technology, working with technology every day, but it strikes me that the human element is still it's absolutely essential. How important has it been to you?
It's absolutely vital. I couldn't agree with that more. I think we've very much taken that on board in terms of when COVID hit and the pandemic hit, because our business was built in a particular way, literally could start working remotely within 24 hours, and we did do that. We've brought people back, and we've gone on a hybrid working environment where people can come in, 2 to 3 days a week and work from home and so on. And it's a very plausible way of working. But I'm constantly encouraging the team to come in and meet people. And it's not just I think there's synergies there that you get from interacting with people in person that you just don't get, through a Zoom call or through Teams connection. You need to meet people, and it's not just kind of working collaboratively with a team, but junior people coming on board learn from watching other people, even in selling, in terms of how they interact with a customer. They'll pick up stuff by osmosis, just by being in the room with them and picking up how they handle themselves and so on. So it's younger. I would certainly encourage any younger people to don't feel that it's a good thing to work remotely. It's definitely in your benefit to actually go in and you won't develop. The reality is, I was a great believer. I did as 3 qualifications. I was probably in education for 8 or 9 years. So I do strongly believe in education, but all your development after that is largely interpersonal skills and picking up stuff from other people. So, I think it's a massive mistake for young people to think that it's great, I can work from home, I can sit in my bedroom and access things. You're not going to develop your career sitting at home. So we encourage it very much from a team point of view. But likewise with customers, we very strongly believe, and I strongly believe, that meeting people in person, people still buy from people, and they want to feel they can trust people. And we've got, so we like to meet clients if we can, in particular partners and larger clients. I have no doubt that there's customers we've won that we've presented to and given them demos online, but the key has been meeting them in person, and they like to feel that they know who they're dealing with. And as I said back on that, when they're using this as a utility, they're trying to sign up a partner, so they want to work with a partner that they can believe in. So that interpersonal part is absolutely fundamental, I think, and I'm a very strong believer in it.
If you reflect back on your journey to date with AccountsIQ, what would you say are the most important lessons that you've learned, and how perhaps have those lessons impacted your approach to business and leadership?
Yeah, it's I think always remaining inquisitive and trusting your instincts are very important. I think trusting your instinct can happen in lots of cases in terms of how what you think is going to work, how you employ people, the sort of people you employ. We've a very strong focus on culture, and we probably attract people that have a similar culture, and trusting your instinct in terms of where people might work. And sometimes we've even taken on people who didn't quite fit the role that they came in on, and yet they're good people, and we've sort of said, okay, we need to work with them and find somewhere for them to allow them to succeed, and that's been important as well, rather than sort of just pigeonholing people into kind of a particular role. And so I've always certainly also remained inquisitive about kind of, you always have to be questioning kind of, is there better ways of doing things? I think looking at things in a positive manner, glass half full rather than glass half empty, is key to being a successful entrepreneur. And a lot of entrepreneurs almost kind of blinker out kind of some of the negative noise so that they can focus on the positives and deliver on the positives. So that's always been the thing. And I also think you need to trust the timing of things that happen, because opportunities don't arise just when you need them. You take the opportunities when they arise, and trust the timing of when they arise. I think that's been important. Also, focusing on building a good business and not a buyer. I think there's an awful lot of people in the technology space that focus on a buyer, who will buy this business. If you build a good business, someone will be interested in it. And so I've always focused on building a good business.
Yeah. So Tony, whilst we're on the subject of entrepreneurship, I guess advice that you might have for aspiring entrepreneurs out there, whether they just be starting out or maybe even facing their own recessionary type moments, what advice would you share for any aspiring entrepreneur?
I guess, you have to start with believing in what you're doing and continuing that belief, because there'll be lots of things that will come in your way that will make you doubt that belief. So you have to kind of believe in the direction you're going in. At the same time, you have to be willing to adapt and adjust as things arise, and be open to adapting and adjusting. It's really important to remain positive, remain focused on your vision, and adapt and adjust. The other thing is, you're never going to do it on your own. So, you'll need to build a team. So I think good entrepreneurs always build a good team, and recognize that they're not what it's about. It's about building a team. So working with the team and being supportive of a team is really key. So a huge element of the role is creating the vision, inspiring others to actually help, be part of that journey and vision, and constantly being supportive of that. So, as you select people, like, the reality is there's no team in the world that's kind of the best team in the world, that's best at everything. Everybody has certain strengths and certain weaknesses and so on. But as a kind of a leader, you need to support your team and always be there and mentor them as much as anything else. So, and make sure that they understand the vision and are part of that vision and part of that journey and want to be part of that journey. That's really important. And also, it's really important not to sit on your laurels. So, from our point of view, no complacency around that we've made it. We're constantly trying to improve it. We got to a certain point in the journey, but it's very much a continual journey, and it's very easy to get complacent. We had, for example, a kind of a head start in the whole area of doing consolidations and doing handling intercompany transactions and so on, and we're a leader in that. And others came up and started to do the same thing, and you have to be prepared for that. So don't get complacent in where you've got to. or that you've made it. Be on a continual journey of improvement. And it's also balance is always important. In terms of just life in general. I mean, I think I've certainly remained involved in sports. For example, I swim, I play golf, I play tennis. I'm still involved in managing a water polo team. And I enjoy that in the background. And I think those things have kept me grounded in terms of not getting so soaked into, what I'm building in AccountsIQ, that it's always good to actually have an outlet and have other things to do and have other aspects to your personality and get a balance. And family is part of that as well. So, all of those are part of the journey, and don't get lost in just, obsessed with, it's very important to have a vision, but not to become obsessed with the vision. It's part of the journey. And if you do become obsessed, you're unlikely to actually be able to deliver on it. So balance is always key. So, having like-minded friends, support a family, positive people, surround yourself with positive people is really important as well, because there's lots of things that will knock you down along the way, and remaining positive is important, and having people who are around you who are supportive and positive is also important.
I think that's a really interesting point you make there, Tony, because the myth and legend would have us believe that from startup to success involves kind of 24/7, live it, sleep it, breathe it, eat it, obsess over it. We hear those stories again. I'm sure myth and legend of investors who back founders because the founders sleep on a couch in the corner of the office and that's all they ever do, and they're committed to hear all of this stuff. But actually, to your point, I've often wondered how much of that is the reality, and also the part that other interests play in making you a more effective leader, a better leader. Balance obviously has been a critical part of it. It doesn't mean you're any less committed. It just means that that balance gives you, as I say, a better chance of leading a group of people to achieve something extraordinary.
Yeah, and I think like that's a very valid point as well. Is the team of people who are following you, they want to lead a balanced life as well, and they want to they want to see you lead by example in terms of how you lead your life. So if you're kind of obsessed and 24/7, it's not necessarily a nice environment to work in. That obsessive kind of thing, and that doesn't mean I often come up with a lot of ideas while I'm swimming or while I'm doing something else. So it gives you that freedom to do other things, because it's not. It's not that you forget about those things, but it's just that you're not obsessed with them, and balance is a key component to. And there's no reason why entrepreneurs have to give up on other things in life. They don't have to do that. There's no need to do that. I work hard while I'm working hard, but I still think balance has been key to me, to longevity. And there's no point in you burning yourself or your team out trying to do stuff either.
What excites you about the future for AccountsIQ?
Well, I think the interesting thing is as I said, never become complacent that you've kind of made it, because like we're constantly kind of meeting in terms of looking at plans as to how we can improve things and keeping an eye on what feedback we're getting. And there's feedback from all over the place, existing customers, when we're presenting to prospects, kind of the feedback we get from them. We measure kind of all this sort of feedback, and we have platforms for keeping track of kind of feedback customers give us, and we're very open to that feedback, and we take feedback from customers. We also are aware of what competitors are doing as well, and an awareness of competitors. Again, it's not about being obsessive. It's just about being aware of what others are doing, but still believing in what you're doing, and market opportunities arise, and different people come up with different ideas, and so it's constantly evolving, and that's what makes it interesting. And it's interesting, we're at the stage where that sort of ability to adapt and adjust, and in building an early stage company and startup company moves to becoming more structured and consistent and kind of measuring things on a monthly basis and so on. And often, you need to make sure that you have people in the team who can actually do those things, because necessarily the sort of the skills to adapt and adjust aren't always they don't become as necessary as you start to grow and develop and need more consistency and structure. So your willingness to adapt to seeing that as well is really important, and making sure your team has that.
What about beyond Accounts IQ, Tony? What personal or professional goals are you most passionate about achieving in the coming years?
I guess I have been involved in other technology companies. I've been chairman of 2 or 3 other technology companies, so I've always kind of chairman as a non-exec, sort of being able to kind of come in at a board meeting and just give a kind of, because I'm not involved, at the coal face, I can see the wood for the trees and can give advice, and I enjoy, helping people who actually have ambition themselves, and give them some benefit of my advice from a distance. So I have enjoyed that. I do have a strong desire to give back, and I'm involved in some sort of not-for-profit sort of stuff that's important to me as well, in terms of how stuff you can give back that it's not necessarily about earning money or building business or doing anything like that, but just giving back. And one of the focus areas I strongly believe in is education. I think education is the big differentiator in life, and it's not having access to education is a huge barrier, and it's something I would feel passionate about, kind of trying to, in a small way, try and make an impact on that. So there's other things that you can bring your kind of the stuff you've learned over the years, in terms of as you've developed and you've picked up on lots of stuff and learned lots of stuff, you can pass it on to other people as well. So I enjoy doing that as well.
So where should listeners go, Tony, to find out more? Where can we point them in? They're interested in Accounts IQ, interested in what you guys are doing. Where should we send them?
Well, I guess the website is probably www.accountsiq.com, and start from there. But we have we're on LinkedIn, we're on all sorts of places where you can find us. But I guess the website is a good place to start.
Fantastic. Well, Tony, my thanks for your insight today. You shared some real pearls of wisdom. It's a wonderful story. And I think the journey on which you found yourself, so much there. I'm struck by the serendipity of a conversation and the impact that can have on the trajectory of our lives. I think the role of balance from an entrepreneur perspective was one thing that really struck me, that perhaps we don't hear all too much about. But there's just so much there around building a technology company. And I think, as always, the thing that strikes me, which is a consistent theme, is, it's 20 years to be an overnight success, right? I think that's always the
I love that one.
Consistent theme I hear around, technology, particularly within technology. I think many of those that are thinking of embarking upon the entrepreneurial journey, we read of the, 14 people in a room that sell for $1 billion after being in existence for 5 minutes. And we all assume that that's it for everybody. And in reality, I think just about everybody I've had as a guest with a founder background and a founder journey has all said the same thing. It's a slog. It's never a straight line. It's relentless, but it's a lot of fun. There's blood, sweat and tears, but it's a lot of fun. So,
and you need lots of resilience to actually be on that journey. But you need to embrace the journey, and it's part of life, and you learn a lot and gain a lot from that journey if you're open to it. So you need to be open to it and not expect something to just land when you expect it to land. Just be open to, as I said earlier, deal with the cards that you're dealt and try and do the best you can with them.
Well, thank you, Tony. Wonderful journey. Really appreciate you coming on to the Extrology podcast to share that experience with our listeners. My very best wishes to you and your colleagues for your continued success, whether that's with Accounts IQ or whether that's in the pool with the water polo team. But every success to all that you've got going on. And I really appreciate you taking the time out to share your experiences with us today.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening to today's Extrology podcast. I really appreciate your audience and ears. If you've enjoyed it, then why not hop onto iTunes and give us a review? I'd really appreciate anything that you might have to say. Any feedback always gratefully received, and look forward to hosting you next time. See you soon. Just a reminder, today's podcast is brought to you by Progresso Talent Partners. Visit www.progressotalent.com today for more information.